Hello, 5th graders. Welcome to Mrs. P TV. My first recording actually calling myself Mrs. Palmieri, I believe. So we're reviewing and previewing some information for the American Revolution so we can get ready for our field trip next week, or in 2 weeks. And I would like you to make 7 vocabulary entries on your TMV that I gave you in class today, and that's due next Tuesday. Let's review quickly, though. The French and Indian War was actually the start of the American Revolution. It was also known as something else in Europe. Do you remember what that was? The 7 Years' War, correct. And it was fought between two sides, two teams, somebody said in one of the classes. Half versus Bic. Let's see if we can remember who Half was and who Bic was. Half were the Huron and the Algonquin Indians. And they were teamed up with the French. They loved the French, actually. They were great teammates. They're great trading partners. They were fighting against the British, who were teamed up with the Iroquois and the American colonists. The British and the French have been long enemies, thousands of years. Huron and the Algonquin also hate the Iroquois, vice versa. So this team-up made sense. What are they fighting over? That Ohio River Valley. The war being fought over the Ohio River Valley because it was important for trade and possibly for fertile, better growing of crops. The French were already out there doing their trading of fur, and the English colonists were anxious to move west themselves. The war will end with what they call the Peace of Paris. And after that, the colonists think they'll be able to just move west no problem, but unfortunately, this Proclamation of 1763 is issued from the king and from Parliament. It said the colonists could not move west of the Appalachian Mountains. That land was going to be reserved for the natives. Now, I want you to remember and keep in mind things like this, like the English Bill of Rights of 1689, and the fact that these British soldiers are remaining here in the colonies. Here are actually a couple of standards that we're going to be working on, explaining the development of colonial government and describing how these developments contribute to the Revolution. How did having legislative bodies and town meetings make the colonists already think that they were kind of in charge of themselves? Think about self-rule. It's not a very good F, is it? Think about democracy. Okay? And then this is the piece that we'll be studying next. So, vocabulary terms. The first term is revolution. Now, it's set up like cards on here. You're just going to do it on your TMV sheet. Revolution. We talked about this the first day we started talking about the American Revolution. The word revolution actually just means a sudden and complete change. So my picture over here, I drew a fabulous stick king. And my stick king here wearing his crown and his robe, he's king in 1775. But by 1776, he's not our king anymore because of our revolution, a sudden and complete change. Feel free to pause as you're making these as you're writing this information down. The next term is ally, or the plural, which is allies. Half versus Bic. Allies are friends in war, right? Two teams, two sides, two alliances, if you will. Okay? The next card is Parliament. Now, Parliament, I know this is a really awesome picture, right? Parliament, notice it's capitalized, is the lawmaking body of government in England. It's their legislature. So this was my sad building that I drew here, and I wrote a little bubble that says, "We make the laws." Okay? So these are our first 3 terms. Revolution, allies, Parliament. These are all important, helping us understand what happened during the American Revolution. Feel free to pause to write anything down before I move on to the next 4 terms. Now, those first 3 terms kind of match up with more before, and now this is going to kind of talk about what happens after the French and Indian War, and how that led to, they say, a big change here in British imperial policy and the colonial response. So these were things you may have heard of before: Stamp Act, Sugar Act, Towns and Duties. Duties is another word for tax. Tea Act or tea tax, intolerable acts, no taxation without representation, Stamp Act Congress, Sons of Liberty, Boston Tea Party. I think I mentioned to you in class that all of these acts, that they were actually different laws, and most of them were some form of tax, so keep this little kind of acronym in mind, okay? So, our other vocabulary words are treason. And you see here in my picture, I've got Dutch tea and Dutch wine, and I've got a ship, and I've got my dock, and this sign says, "No non-British goods in Boston," right? Treason means to go against your government. If you are a traitor, you're committing treason. The British felt that's what the colonists were doing by breaking the laws, by breaking the Navigation Acts, which said that they could only import goods, right, from England. Next word, boycott. I bet you might know this word, okay? And how it applies for us is I showed this dress and I showed them making their own cloth here, and here's British tea and British cloth. Find some other tea, it says. Boycott means to refuse to buy or to refuse to do something in protest. Protest should almost be its own vocabulary word because it's pretty important, actually. And the colonists found a lot of different ways to protest. Boycotting, refusing to buy something, like British goods, was one of the ways they protested. Repeal, now listen, repeal is not repel. I think that repel is one of your science vocab words when you do magnets. Repeal, okay, stop. No more Stamp Act. Repeal means to take back, to end, or to cancel. Parliament actually will repeal many of the laws because the colonists protest so violently toward them. And your last word is liberty. It's an easy one. And what I drew here was the colonies. In 1775, they belonged to England. But in 1776, they considered themselves to be free. The definition of liberty is freedom. So once you've written all these down, then you have all that you need for your TMV that we need for Tuesday for class, and you're on your way to knowing these words and definitions to help us for the field trip. Hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll see you later. Mrs. P, signing off.